too much fear. We're here for the facts, bro.
This is not rumor or myth. This is the real deal.
There's science behind every choice, but the science doesn't lie. To be honest, it's a full throttle clinic day.
No question is too tough. We will tackle it all.
You want the truth? We're bringing it to you right here on TBH.
Hello, Full Throttle Doc audience. Welcome to Media PSC Command Central in episode 3 of TBH Breast Implants. If you want the real story, no BS from the world's experts on breast implants, you picked the right show. Right here on TBH, you will get the unbiased version of reality, hence the name To Be Honest. Just straight talk on real breast implant stories. Today's episode is Hot Topics in Breast Implants. With me, as always, is renowned plastic surgeon, educator, and innovator, Dr. Rod Rohrich. Rod, Hot Topics has always been a fan favorite. In fact, you were the first chair of the epically popular Hot Topics program for the Aesthetic Society and SPS. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. And this is a great continuum of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hot Topics, people hear that and they're like, okay, I got to watch this. So it's definitely a draw. We're going to have some great discussions. We've got some really hot topics to talk about. Yeah. And so I think let's move on. Time to meet our experts. So let's meet the mighty Dr. Caroline Glicksman.
TBH is thrilled to introduce a true pioneer in plastic surgery, a trailblazer who spent more than 3 decades breaking barriers and raising standards. She earned her medical degree at the State University of New York and received advanced training at world-renowned institutions, including Memorial Sloan Kettering and Massachusetts General. In Girt, New Jersey, she built a thriving private practice, then added a master's degree in pharmaceutical and medical device law, making her a force in regulation, safety, and patient outcomes. As the first woman medical director of a breast implant clinical trial, she's opened doors for women in leadership and shaped implant safety worldwide. Later, she led as president of the Aesthetic Surgery Education and Research Foundation, guiding the specialty into the future. Her impact extends beyond the operating room. She's authored textbook chapters, published peer-reviewed articles, lectured worldwide, and today serves as a clinical professor at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. She hasn't just followed the standard in medicine, she's written it with brilliance and integrity. TBH is proud to welcome Dr. Caroline Glicksman.
Hey, Caroline.
Morning
Awesome.
From New Jersey.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Right.
And like so many accomplishments, and so you must feel proud for all the hard work, all the education. I was going to say that I feel like you and I have been, there's certain people that you go through your career with, especially as an educator. Caroline's one of those people. It's almost like you're my education sister, and it's been a long, really great ride.
Yes. Well, raising kids, raising our kids first. Kids start to grow up, and then you have more time to do other things. That was kind of the pattern for me. I had to raise 4 kids and get them going, trying to attend meetings in between. But then when you finally get those kids out of the house, you have time to actually really dedicate some time to research and education.
Yeah, and that's what I always, when I think of you, it's not only all the accomplishments you've done in plastic surgery, but it's like the success you had with like 4 great kids, because I've met them, and I mean, your husband could be your 5th kid, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, there's an orthopedic surgeon. It's always your
Yeah. You got 5 kids. So when were you at the Mass General?
I did my aesthetic fellowship with Gene Curtis.
Oh my God.
After plastic surgery at New York Hospital Cornell.
Yeah, I trained there, and Gene was my faculty. He is phenomenal. It's great.
Yeah.
Great place. Great place.
All right. Well, that's thanks for joining us, Caroline. And we're gonna meet our second expert. So let's meet the Lion of London, Dr. Patrick Mallucci.
TBH is excited to welcome one of the world's most celebrated plastic surgeons, a true international leader whose skill and artistry has defined excellence in the field. Board certified in plastic surgery, the founder of Mallucci, his namesake clinic is built on a reputation of the highest standard of care and compassion for patients, with an emphasis on unmatched results. Since graduating medical school in 1989, he's earned fellowship at the Royal College of Surgeons of England and completed advanced training across the UK and abroad. He is a full member of respected organizations, the top associations in British plastic surgery. On stage and in the classroom, he's a sought-after speaker and mentor. His landmark study, The Perfect Breast, set new global standards in aesthetics, defining the modern approach to breast surgery. He continues to teach at every level, shaping the next generation. Respected for his precision, dedication, and of course that signature British eloquence, TBH proudly welcomes Dr. Patrick Mallucci.
Cheers, Patrick. How's it going, mate?
It's great. Yeah, I'm. It's late afternoon here in sunny London. It's lovely to be joining you guys.
Yeah,
Great.
Patrick, I feel like I'm talking about Caroline. We've done a lot of stuff, education. I feel like you're my international brother in education, and so many great times, so many different meetings and things that we've spent time together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think my whole teaching journey pretty much started with you, Bill. It's just been a great journey through the years.
Yeah, Rod. I tell you, I have a funny story about Patrick. Is early on in my career, when I was going to meetings, people said, you got to meet this guy, Patrick Mallucci. You guys would get along great. And I was like, yeah, who is this guy? I hadn't met him. And so then I went to London one time to do live surgery, and they were, oh yeah, all these people are going to come watch you. And like, not that many people showed up. And I was like, well, where is everybody? They're like, oh, well, Patrick Mallucci is having a master class the same time. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Like, he's stealing my audience. But Patrick, then we finally met, and it's just one of those things. You meet somebody, you're like, okay, this person is really in sync with the way I think, and great guy, and it's been so many great times. So
Yeah, I think you've earned that title, Lion of London. I think both you and Bill are your candor speaks for itself, and you'll see it in this podcast. It's going to be.
Well, it's just been so. I mean, I've known Caroline for years, and I knew Rod. It's and you've all enriched my life, and it's been fantastic.
All right, well, that's great. I think. We have a really interesting show. I know you all are going to be fantastic with all your insights and expertise. Just want to take a quick moment to thank all of our sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. And a special shout out to Allergan, who stepped up and led the way to make this show possible. Okay, BJ, let's get to today's show. Here we go with some full throttle edutainment. But before we go full throttle, we want to hear from you, the audience. Be sure to like us. You can send us our questions that you want to hear answered or have things discussed, make comments at our YouTube page channel at the Plastic Surgery Channel, or our X page at HeyDocTBH. So we're going to get into our first case of the day. And this case is sponsored by our friends at Sientra, who have stepped up and helped support TBH and real conversations on breast implants here today. Okay, so hot topic quick hits. We've got a couple really great topics to discuss. These are super hot topics. So breast implant surveillance is a very hot topic, and there's been a lot of evolution. So we're going to talk about high resolution ultrasound and registries. So high resolution ultrasound, the history of it is that for many, many years, actually, many of us knew ultrasound was probably a better, more accepted way to do implant surveillance. Ever since 2006, the approval of silicone gel breast implants, surveillance was a big topic. but the FDA was only recognizing MRI. But I presented, Caroline, I think, has presented, many people have presented at the FDA clinical advisory meetings and on ultrasound, and the real value of using that as a preferred technique for implant surveillance. So it's certainly preferred by patients. And over time, what happened was patients weren't getting MRIs. And so the FDA in 2019, thankfully, accepted a high resolution ultrasound as an alternative way for implant surveillance. And it actually is more accurate than MRIs. It's actually best delivered in office by plastic surgeons, which I think we'll talk about. And this is actually just a study, it's an ultrasound study that we published just recently in the Aesthetic Surgery Journal, but it looks at survival of implants over time. And one of the questions has been, how long do implants last? But you can see here for surveillance, at 10 years, only less than 1% of the implants have a rupture or a leak. And at 15 years, over 90% are still intact. And in fact, I can tell you that data, these papers that get published, that data is approaching 20 years now with the same thing. So only about 10% of those implants have a rupture. So Caroline, with that introduction, tell us about, you've done a lot of stuff on ultrasound. You and I have taught courses. So tell us about your perspective on ultrasound for surveillance.
Right. So, what you said is exactly true. In 2011, we went down to the FDA and we sat there with the Aesthetic Society and ASPS, and we went before the FDA and we said, you currently want an MRI at year 5 and every year, 2 years after, but nobody's doing it.
Right.
Patients are not doing it. And what I really see is that there are two groups of neglected patients. A patient can get an implant at age 22 in the United States, a silicone implant. They don't get a mammogram until they're 40. So you've got this group of patients that nobody is watching their implants. They certainly don't have money for these $3,000 MRIs or $2,000 MRIs, and they weren't being seen by anybody, and they weren't being scheduled for routine breast imaging. So that's a missing group of patients. There's also a group of patients who are in their, late 60s and 70s, probably some of the breast reconstruction patients. Once they have a breast reconstruction, again, if that plastic surgeon discharges them, nobody orders any imaging. They've already had their breasts removed. So these groups of patients were clearly neglected, not to mention all the other patients who just weren't following any surveillance guidelines. And educating ourselves and getting the equipment that is affordable and easy to use and has a rapid learning curve, plastic surgeons were able to rapidly get ourselves to 97 to 98% accuracy with sensitivity and specificity, knowing what you're seeing and whether you're right or wrong. Because we look at the ultrasound and then we go to the OR. We look at the ultrasound and go to the OR. And it's this rapid learning curve. And we published on that as well. So it's the same thing, that basically women need a way for safe and effective surveillance of their implants. And plastic surgeons need to be able to assess their patient. And as I was with Nolan Karp up at NYU this week teaching an ultrasound course, and someone said, do you charge for it? How do we do this type of thing? We said, it's part of the physical exam. It is how we follow our patients with breast implants that plastic surgeons now have ultrasound in our office, and we make ourselves better surgeons and we follow our patients. And the patients are following the guidelines now.
Yeah. I want to just clarify. I think what Caroline and Bill did was such a service to patients because nobody was doing MRIs and plastic surgeons didn't believe in it. So it took, people like you guys to say, hey, let's do what is rational, what's safe, and ultrasound has been an amazing alternative. And it's really not the FDA, it's us that have to lead the way.
Patrick, people have, I guess adversaries to this that we've heard say, plastic surgeons aren't trained to do this. But frankly, plastic surgery is probably the last surgical subspecialty to adopt ultrasound. Most of the other specialties, surgical oncology, general surgery, ER physicians, they all have adopted ultrasound as a everyday tool that they use and deliver by those people. And but radiologists have never done this. They've never held a breast implant. That's one of the things that I feel like plastic surgeons know what breast implants, how they behave, the pathologic conditions. So what do you think about this modality?
I think Caroline said it all when she said, you're you're doing the ultrasound, you're going to the R, you're relating those two things directly from image to real life.
Right.
And as you say, you know, a radiologist can't do that, doesn't have that experience. So the sort of third dimension that we get is unparalleled. So yeah, and look, I echo everything that Caroline said. In the UK, mammography doesn't start until the age of 50.
Really?
50. Yeah. So, you know, talking about a large group of patients who potentially are completely under the radar, and there are no guidelines, there are no, it's completely, you know, up to the individual as to whether it's done or not. But I think we should be doing a lot more.
Yeah, and certainly patients really prefer it. I mean, the patients
Absolutely.
think it's,
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's reassurance. That's what patients want. You know, it's you know, why wouldn't you do one? It's crazy. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. It's safe, it's reproducible, no radiation, and it's easy.
isn't it funny that people talk about, oh, plastic surgeons, you know, I don't know if they're trained to do this, but as you all have articulated, I don't think that's a real issue. But the interesting thing is once you start doing ultrasounds on patients, they start looking at the ultrasound, they start pointing things out too. They learn when you're delivering the ultrasound. So have you seen that to be a problem?
Oh, no. I mean, absolutely. It changes the conversation. There is a reason that I follow my patients every 2 years. I just choose to do that. And to bring them in and feel their breaths for a few minutes, talk about their family and say goodbye is one thing. To actually do a quick ultrasound on them and say, you know what, I know you said that you hurt yourself in the gym last week, or you had an injury, or you felt a little something, but your implant is fine, and I'll see you in 2 years. If something changes, or you've had some swelling, or something doesn't feel right, you just call me and we'll look at the implant. It's very different. And if a patient comes in who I haven't seen in 8 or 9 years and they disappeared and they do have a rupture, the nice thing for most of our patients is they have two. And the husband can go and go, that one doesn't look the same. It is not that difficult. And so it basically streamlines your conversation. Look, I do see a rupture. I suggest we do something soon. And instead of that patient leaving and having to get a scheduled film somewhere, they go to the front desk and they actually schedule their procedure. And you talk about how much time it's going to take. You know what's involved. You make decisions about keeping implants or not keeping implants as patients age. So it is an important part of the physical exam and the maintenance and surveillance of following women with implants.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that's kind of funny is that the term rupture, I think, has been convoluted a little bit. And people think there's some explosion that happens when an implant has a tear in the shell. And really, that's obviously not the case. But the one thing I would say that we've learned now that we're seeing all these patients back and doing ultrasounds, as I showed in that data, Patrick, implants are actually pretty durable. You know, they don't last forever. And I don't think anybody at this point is telling anybody an implant lasts forever, but they can last quite a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, really, really important data when you're talking to patients, when you're talking about safety, longevity. It's one of the first, you know, worries they have. And, you know, of course, patients come back for lots of reasons. But I think what your data shows is that rupture is perhaps a lot rarer than people think, both medics and the public at large, and that's important safety data.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
All right, well, I want to segue to the second part of this surveillance discussion. It's really about registries. And Caroline, I want you to address this, but there's two registries in the United States. We have the American Registry of Breast Implant Surveillance called ARISE, and then that's through the Aesthetic Society, and then NBIR, National Breast Implant Registry, is through ASPS. But Caroline, you've been instrumental certainly in the registry and the importance of that. So tell us more.
Well, we realized, you know, back in like 2017 or 18, that quite a few of the aesthetic surgeons, especially, were not using any registry at all. And we needed something that collected much more detailed data. It was right at the time when we were looking at patients who were complaining of their systemic symptoms that were rising, a lot of social media, and really building out. We had a nice donation, a large donation from Allergan to start it was called Aesthetic One. But that platform wasn't robust enough. It wasn't a large enough platform to house the high number of devices we were registering. And a year ago in 2024, we moved over to a much more larger platform that is recognized by the NIH and the FDA. and now have accumulated. We did our first annual report, was published October 1st, and we have now 120,000 devices that are registered and with very detailed data, and including all 4 main manufacturers in the United States. We have Allergan, Sientra, Establishment Labs, Motiva. We have all of the manufacturers that are on there as well, Mentor, and all of our surgeons across the country that are now utilizing one of the other of each of the registries. And our main focus is to make sure that surgeons register their implants, whichever registry they prefer.
Patrick, how about in the UK? You have a registry, correct?
We do. So NHS England, which is the public health system, has a registry, and registering is obligatory for anybody using breast implants. And again, it's only a good thing, really. As you know, in Europe and particularly, there have been a few controversies with implants, and a few brands that have caused problems, and there hasn't really been any good recorded data. And it's only really in the last probably 4 or 5 years that the registry has really got up and going. And very important piece of data collection.
Yeah, well, that's great stuff. All right, well, I want to segue over to our next subtopic here. So we're going to talk about Generation 7 breast implants. So people probably remember back in episode 1, we talked about the generation story and the different implants, but we didn't really talk about this, but there is a Generation 7 implant, which is a lightweight implant, and it's called the B-Light implant. And Patrick, you're probably one of the foremost people in the world that's had quite a bit of experience with B-Light. So tell us a little bit about that implant, and we'd love to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, the B-Light implant is an interesting implant. I mean, I've probably been using it for 10 years. It's 30% lighter than a standard silicone implant. Why is it lighter? It's lighter because within this silicone gel are little air-filled microspheres. They're borosilicate microspheres, which are bound to the silicone molecules. And that bond between the microspheres and the silicone is extremely strong. In fact, it's stronger than the silicone-silicone bond. So you can imagine that you've got this aerated silicone gel, which renders it lighter. And if you think about it, why wouldn't you want a lighter implant? I mean, implants are weights. There are consequences of that weight over time in the breast, which is a mobile, moving structure. And not only is it less heavy as such, but we also know that the pressure exerted, because there's less mass, is also significantly less on the breast. So, breast atrophy, skin stretching, etc., all very beneficial. So it's been a very exciting and innovative implant. One of the things I should say is, like with everything, every implant has got a good thing about it and a bad thing about it. No implant is perfect, and I think that's a really important point. And I think one of the criticisms of the B-Light is that the gel is actually quite a bit firmer than any silicone gel that you guys will be used to. So again, you need some careful implant selection. Perhaps in somebody who's very thin, that can be a little bit too feelable, might be a contraindication. But where there's good tissue cover, that's not an issue.
Patrick, what about breast implant surveillance, not only for integrity, but also for cancer? Does that air affect that result at all? I'm not.
That is a great question, Rod. And the answer is yes, it does. In all forms of imaging, that air, the presence of the air, really cleans up the image. And they've even done, there's an image where...
So it's a positive.
It's a great positive. Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, no, you see really, really clear images. And there's a great image of a B-Light implant. You can radiologically see through it. And what they did was they took out a bit of microcalcification, put a B-Light over the microcalcification, took an X-ray of it, and you can see the microcalcification through the implant. So radiologically, that's also, very interesting and of great benefit long term.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I actually had a follow-up for you, Patrick, that I know that Polytech now is they're working on a second version of that implant. I think maybe to address some of the feel of it. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. So generation 2 is going to be called Brilliance, which I think is a great name.
Sounds very British.
Yeah, and it should be coming out probably second half of next year. But you're absolutely right, Bill. What it's done is it's produced a much softer gel whilst maintaining the weight reduction. So I think that's going to be an amazing, step forward.
Actually, I think I may be the only U.S. surgeon that's ever been around B-Light implants and Labrador. I actually went in Israel to the founder, the B-Light device, which is actually Jackie and Dale Govrin, and operated with Jackie in his facility. He's so gracious, had a great time, but really interesting. Really interesting.
So
Bill,
why aren't they in the U.S.?
I think Polytech would like to have them.
Rod, don't get me started about implants in the US. I mean, that's your FDA, which I think drives me more crazy than it does you guys, because
That would be
Yeah.
a 10 PMA. That would be, you see them here in about 2036.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's-
God.
actually, it's being worked on actively as we speak.
Yeah.
But it's actually very interesting. I've learned quite a bit just from Patrick and actually, knowing the R&D guys from Polytech, who are fantastic guys. But just like you said, Patrick, volume has a different response in tissues, where it's almost volume has a transient effect, but weight in the breast it's an ongoing effect.
Absolutely.
So it's a big deal. A 30% lighter implant will have far less effects of tissue over time.
So what's
But
the
it's-
negative? What's the negative? I mean,
But Rod, that's a question you've got to ask your FDA. The great thing about regulatory bodies, of course, they're there for patient safety,
right.
but there's a balance between progress and safety, and it seems to me that the FDA is so stuck on safety that you'll make no progress.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, that's a note to self, Rod. You need to talk to the FDA about that.
Yeah. I've talked to them enough.
And maybe, a fair criticism of Europe is that things have been a bit too lax and there have been a bit too many rogue implants. I accept that as well, but I think there has to be a balance, because
Right.
honestly, I really believe that, having a lighter weight implant, I mean, you said, Rod, what's the negative? I can't think, there is no negative.
Yeah.
It's only good.
Yeah. All right. Time to go. We're going to go to our Sew It Up. All right. So, we've got a few questions here. This actually came to us. Let's do question number 6. Caroline, I'm going to have you to. This question is: are high resolution ultrasound machines expensive? What do you think about that?
Well, if you go to I went to my orthopedic surgeon and he used a Sonotech or whatever. It's probably a $60,000 device. Totally unnecessary for what we're doing. They range somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000 for a device, or even a little bit less. And you buy the you have an annual ability to have cloud storage and communication with a whole network of other surgeons. And it's around $3,000 to $4,000 investment, a little bit of time to train. And that's it. That's all you have. And then every few years, if the model gets updated, I just traded mine in for $1,500. I got a brand new model. So no, they'll probably compared to a $150,000 laser.
Exactly.
It's pen.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, man, compared to these people that are buying these lasers and stuff that are far more expensive. Ultrasound, stuff comes down the road in our careers. Like I would say, ultrasound is one of the probably top 3 things that's been developed in my career that has the largest impact.
Game
And
changer.
it's a total game changer. And actually, just a quick one here before we move on. Cam, let's go to question number 3. This is about brands, Caroline and Patrick? Like, are there differences in brands and how long they last based on ultrasound exams? I don't know what you guys think, Pat.
What differences in implant brands?
Yeah, like different types of implants and how long they last.
You know what? I honestly think that today, the hoops that the manufacturers have to jump through are the same for everybody. And, I don't think today we can really talk about one brand being better than the other. They all have different properties, which, I like, you like, Caroline likes, Rod likes, whatever. But I think it's all pretty similar now. I don't know what Caroline thinks.
I would say it does matter if you see a patient and they tell you, I have a style 153 implant from 2002. There were specific older generation implants that routinely I see a rupture in, as compared to the newer generation implants, which are the ones that we're seeing that, anywhere from just a few years old to 10 years old. The older generation ones, I think there were some differences between manufacturers.
Yeah, and I think that there was that scandal with the implant they were filling with mattress foam or something.
PIP.
Yeah, PIP. But that was a totally different deal. But actually, in the ultrasound study that I showed, we actually looked at different brands, and there's no difference. I think that all of the implants are very high quality. And actually, the interesting thing is that at the FDA clinical advisory meeting, there's so much discussion about, oh my God, how long these things last? Well, now we have the data. They actually last quite a long time. Like, implants don't need to be replaced every 10 years. That's the old mantra. The current implants need to be followed with ultrasound. So, all right,
Bill, I have a question that just came in on my social media. It's for Caroline. Which registry should the implant request or the surgeon? I mean, there's two great ones. Which one? And I think patients
one or the
also,
other.
It depends on obviously whether you're in a major hospital center where they may not allow certain registries and HIPAA reasons, whether you have your own private surgery center, whether you're operating in your own OR, what your reps come in and help you with, and which type of data you want to collect, who's doing the data collection for you. It's so simple. The ARISE registry takes literally 3 minutes to enter everything.
So it's easy. It's easy.
Very easy. It's up to the individual surgeon.
Okay.
But we want surgeons to register. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, in the UK, it's mandatory with the NHS.
Yeah, not here
That's
yet,
right.
but we're working on it.
Yep. Stiff upper lip in the UK, man.
Don't mess around in the UK, man. They don't mess around there.
That's right.
If you don't use the registry, you're probably thrown in jail, right, Patrick?
That's right. You're out on the street.
All right, we're going to move on to our second case of the day. All right, so this case today is Misinformation Mayhem. So we pulled some different clips to kind of generate discussion. This first one is about saunas causing implants to leach bad stuff out. So let's just take a look.
All right, y'all wouldn't drink water out of a water bottle that had been roasting at 106 degrees like it is in Austin all the time here, because it would leach microplastics out of the water bottle into your system when you drank the fluids. Similarly, when you've been in a sauna, ones that really go high in temperature up to like 200, 220, they will leach chemicals out of the shell into your system. I've seen this in my patients, so I want you to be careful.
Okay, Caroline, so do women with implants need to be careful of saunas?
Okay. It's difficult to answer that one seriously and succinctly. In the 1980s and 90s, there was a case where a woman, Roger Wickstrom just relayed this story. Dow Corning did some investigation. There was a woman who said that she was about to be cremated. That was her plan for her funeral. She did not want her family to know that she had breast implants. So the question was, at what temperature do breast implants begin to melt? Okay, they begin to melt or disintegrate at like 300 degrees Celsius and up to thousands of degrees. That sauna that may be 200 degrees, there's this thing called thermoregulation. You would be long dead before your body reached the temperature. You'd have seizures and be out the door of the sauna. So that type of comment is fear-mongering. It's as simple as that. It is to perpetuate the myth that something could leach out of an implant. And we've already done the studies to say what comes out of implants.
Yeah,
It's
crazy.
crazy. Microplastic, there was no analogy to those. It's totally ridiculous.
Patrick, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Caroline has been far more diplomatic in her answer than than I might be. So we'll stick with Caroline's answer.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next question. So this, there are these people out there that are claiming to be breast explant experts, like breast implant removal experts. This is a social media clip of somebody who's saying that they're a plastic surgery explant specialist, a breast implant removal expert. But I mean, Caroline, you've done a lot of research on related topics. So what do you think? Are there breast explant experts?
Fortunately, we saw a big rise in this with the en bloc experts and the breast explant experts around 2017, 2018, which prompted us to get the funding and to do a huge research study to actually show that there really was no need to do these, capsulectomies, in fact, to do any capsulectomy for patients to feel better who want to remove their implants. And we actually had 17 countries that signed on to a safety statement, 17 international plastic surgery societies that signed on to say there is no such thing as a breast explant expert. It's as simple as that. But people obviously are still going to use this to lure vulnerable women and to make money. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, just with the whole ongoing saga of systemic symptoms, certainly, Caroline, we'll talk about this hopefully in this discussion, but it's this notion that, the implants are causing all these problems and these people are profiting off of creating fear, and then, there's only 4 people in the country that can do this type of surgery and you need this en bloc capsulectomy. I think it's just, it's a little sus.
Yes.
We have experts in the UK, but I think Caroline and Pat McGuire have pretty much ruined their careers through their research. So I don't know whether how long they're going to be experts for.
Caroline, and so through your research, are there toxic things in implants that can come out? Maybe not in the sauna, but is there a fundamental thing? Has that been tested? And then what would you say? Obviously there's a faction of women that believe that they're having symptoms, and they probably are having some symptoms. So the question is that being caused by the breast implant? So what do you think based on your research?
Part one is that we did heavy metals analysis. We've been going to the FDA hearings for years. We've been hearing from women's groups that they have an ingredient list. It's really, it's just the what is utilized in the manufacture of the implants. And that's all been tested before they allow these devices on the market. You can thank the FDA for that. But basically, the patients in these women's groups will look at that as a list of ingredients. And so what we did is we tested for like 21 heavy metals. So we sent out over 200 capsules and breast tissue from women who had never had an implanted device in their life. And there were a few metals identified, but all were in levels below any levels of toxicological concern. And things like arsenic were there more often in patients who might have been, eating rice and gluten-free diets and smokers and environmental products in normal breast tissue that had never had an implant. So we kind of put an end to the toxins leaching out of an implant. But, you're still going to see that on these Facebook rumors.
But, Bill, I want to congratulate the Aesthetic Society and the Foundation and for Caroline and you, Bill, for doing these studies. And they're all published, actually, now in peer-reviewed literature. All of what you said is so correct. So all of that is just fear-mongering, and really it's social media mania that we've actually seen so much. So I think this hits home for, those that are viewing this, that, there are no quote-unquote toxins like this, and it's just nonsense.
Caroline, so I just want to ask you a follow-up. So what's causing these symptoms in the women?
Well, there'll always be the presence of a device in somebody's body. We can't actually answer exactly right now. But where our research led us, the one thing that we could see in every single study was a elevated level of anxiety, illness anxiety, and depression, and a lot of patients, modern health worries, patients who are worried about a lot of things, about their food, and they're online quite a bit. So what we did was a psychological study. We are not psychiatrists or psychologists. We let the psychologists run their studies. We ran a beautiful study in the US and the UK, and we did a prospective study again, and it led us towards finding that there was an 18 times higher likelihood of patients having what's called a somatic symptom disorder. They catastrophize, they dwell on illnesses. It's sort of an illness anxiety disorder. That is not, I'm saying, is the answer for every single patient, but it clearly was statistically significant in the patients who are searching for surgeons, searching for an answer, and who get better when their implants are taken out because their object of fear is done. So that's a wonderful thing, to be able to do less surgery on these patients, remove their implants, and make them feel better. And perhaps they're not the right patients to have had an implant in the first place.
Yeah, and this is a global thing, Patrick, correct? I mean, you see the same issues.
Same issues. And I've just had the privilege of hearing Pat McGuire speak in Brussels, give a beautiful keynote lecture summarizing all of your work, Caroline. And I honestly think that, we cannot underestimate the importance of the work that you guys have done in clearing up a lot of this scaremongering. I think it's probably one of the most important pieces of work in recent times. And I really commend you and Pat for what you've done. Amazing.
Right. Yeah, that's kudos. Great stuff. All right, well, let's move on. So we're going to talk about, again, preservation and then any procedure. There's all sorts of preservation, rhinoplasty, preservation abdominoplasty, preservation lasers, facelifts, and there's preservation breast augmentation, which is the subject we're going to talk about. So we have a video clip. Actually, we have a great friend of the Plastic Surgery Channel and Media PSC, Dr. Johnny Franco. He's going to be kind of going through, some different anatomy and what the concept is. And then we have the great Roy DeVita from Rome, who actually is talking about the same thing, but they have slightly different perspectives. I think that will lead off our discussion. So let's take a look.
We kind of take a step back, right? So there's a submuscular or dual plane, right? Half under the muscle when we release this to get the nipple into a great spot. There's also what we call, subfascial, where we lift that fascia to hold it into a good spot. And then subglandular, which is just right under the breast tissue above the muscle and the fascia in that nice natural plane. That's what we're going to utilize here, because what we're trying to do is no longer does the implant have to be right at the fold. No longer does the implant have to be right under the nipple, because you have all these ligaments, all these tissues that are supporting the breast, but now we're going to use it to support the implant. Because in the past, we used to cut all of these bands to free up a space to put that pocket. Now, if you think about it, we're going to use these almost as a tenting effect to lift and shape the breast. So, for all of our patients out there that want to improve their overall shape without increasing their size or adding volume, we get a lot of patients talking about, I want to improve the breast, I don't want to add volume. We can actually specifically put the implant in a perfect spot, preserving all this tissue, preserving your natural architecture to improve that.
Second claim, natural results. Not really. Preservate tends to fill just the upper pole of the breast. So the natural look only happens inside the bra. Naked, it usually looks less natural and honestly less attractive than a breast after a classic breast augmentation, in the majority of cases actually. Third claim, faster recovery. Why? You can use the same anesthetic techniques in classic breast augmentation and have the exact same discharge and recovery time, but with the added advantage of using any type of implant you want. Smooth, microtexture, polyurethane, round, or anatomical.
So Patrick, this has been in Europe for a long time, a lot longer than here in the United States. So I think you're going to have a very valuable perspective. But I thought one thing in particular, one of the things that I think people associate you with is this whole concept of the ideal breast. And I think what I learned from that, beauty is in the lower pole of the breast. So and that's kind of the reason we're showing this, is that these are both great surgeons, Johnny and Roy, but they're basically saying two different things. One, to put an implant in the upper part of the breast, or it's not at the inframammary fold, that to me I don't know how that's going to produce a nice looking breast in majority of patients. But just tell us what your perspective is on this.
Yeah, Bill, what's my perspective? I'll tell you what I would say is, we talk about innovation, in what we do. But I think we've also got to look at innovation and marketing side by side and not confuse the two. Because what is really innovation and what is marketing? What is really innovative about this technique? And this is the bit that worries me. It's the language used around this technique, because I couldn't agree with you more, Bill. This idea of sort of blindly dissecting a pocket, shoving an implant in completely the wrong place. I agree with that. Just doesn't make any sense. And I think, you know, this idea of trying to promote it as minimally invasive and a completely different recovery. Again, I agree with Roy on this. You know, we do everything under sedation. We're about to publish a series of nearly 600 cases looking at our recovery, which is no different to theirs. The difference being that I can use whatever implant I want, whatever shape, whatever surface, whatever gel. So I see that a lot of noise is around Preservé. I see it as a very one-dimensional procedure where you can only use one type of implant, very small volumes, placed blindly. And I think the potential for mishap, complications, malposition, and how do you sort them out? What do you do when you get these complications? You know, what about that? And then this other thing about minimally invasive, and again, I do feel strongly about this. I would argue that by definition, breast surgery is minimally invasive. Whether you do it through a 4 centimeter scar or a 2 centimeter scar, it's an external organ. It doesn't make any difference. There's no physiological consequence or difference in doing one or the other. It's not like doing open heart surgery or laparoscopic heart surgery. That's minimally invasive. And there is a huge physiological consequence. So you cannot compare the two. And I think it's inappropriate to use terms like minimally invasive as applied to this technique. So, you know, these are my issues with the current language that's been used.
So I have a question for Caroline and Rod, because I mean, both of you have had extensive experience in educating, and we've seen that evolution, Caroline, over our careers of, you know, transaxillary, blunt, blind, dissection, and that evolved, you know, really kind of when we got into education, it was about that paradigm shift of changing from blunt, blind dissection to precise dissection under direct vision. So to me, it seems quite a bit of a misnomer. It's interesting, Patrick, that like what's actually really an advancement and what's marketing and gimmickry? What do you think?
I think I really like Rod. It's research, it's data, and show me the results. You know, if this does work well, and we, you know, innovation sometimes surprises us, and people come out with ideas. When I can see prospective data, and somebody actually follows their patients and tells us about malpositions, tells us about palpability, tells us about complications, numbers of revisions, sizes of implants that were used. When there's data, I had a whole battle with my good friend Steve Teitelbaum at a recent meeting, is that I'm always open for innovation. When they publish more data on it, then I will review the data and see really in larger numbers of patients, varied surgeons with varied skills, how does this work? Not everybody trained the same way. And then utilizing larger devices, things like that go off of what their plan was. It'll be very interesting to see in a couple of years the data. And then that's what I want to see. I want to see somebody doing a prospective study with this and showing us, like you said, separating science from marketing. And I think that we'll be able to have our answers.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the meeting you were talking about, and then Patrick and I were just at 3 of the biggest breast meetings in Europe. And I mean, really, this came under a lot of fire. Like there's a lot of people that really think it's more marketing than true innovation. But Rod, I mean, what's your perspective?
You know, my perspective again lies in science, like Caroline said. But you know, Pat, you know, I think Patrick's right. Is it innovation or is it truly something different or marketing? But the big thing is, to me, it looks to me like back to the future. When I was taught plastic surgery at the University of Michigan and Harvard, we did blunt dissection. And I thought that was good, but look where we've come. Clean, precise, atraumatic technique, great long-term results. But, show us the data. We're back to the future, going above the muscle and putting it in blind spaces. Maybe that's better, but let's see the long-term data and let's take out social media.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think absolutely true. I would argue we've been doing preservation breast augmentation for 25 years. That's the advancement, and that's what's been a paradigm shift. We just didn't market it as being like.
But preservation is a hot topic, everything.
I wanted to go back to what you said though, Bill, because I spent a lot of my life looking at breast shape and the concept of volume distribution, and this seems to go totally against that, which I just don't understand. And it somehow seems now acceptable to accept compromise in outcome of look for the procedure itself, and that worries me a little bit.
Yeah, Patrick, and you said
I think you might be generalized. Let me just say that there are some surgeons that are very talented that have worked on this for a long time, who may, in their hands, have a very beautiful result and a very happy patient. So, it's not one technique for everybody, and in certain patients and certain plastic surgeons' hands. I agree. I always hate when marketing leads to science, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, there may be some surgeons who are very good at this, and it's better than them putting in a big implant, under direct vision. So I just would wait and see and say to each surgeon their own until we see the data.
Yeah, and Patrick, you said it. You said and you do things under sedation, anesthesia. You can do, if you decide you want to do it on top of the muscle, you can do that. The question is, you can also use a very small implant. A lot of times these are but you can do all that stuff. You don't need, but you can do it precisely under direct vision, and you don't need like a kit to do that, right? So
in our study, which hopefully is about to be published very soon, the median implant size was 240 cc's, which means that half of the implants were less than 240 cc's. So this idea that it requires that technique to attract a small implant market just isn't true. That is my market. You don't need that special technique to claim that the growth of that new market. And as I said, when I talk to patients about general anesthetic or sedation, they're extremely relieved when we talk about sedation, because general anesthetic is perceived as dangerous.
All right, let's go to the Sew It Up. So this is a question that came in. It says the Preservé approach claims minimal disruption of glandular and connective tissue. How do you reliably control pocket shape if you're not releasing or modifying the native support tissues? Patrick, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Preservé would argue that you're increasing stability by not cutting those Cooper's ligaments. That's what Preservé would argue. I think the concern I have is that, like we said, it's blunt, it's blind dissection, and also, what plane are you in? This is almost an intraglandular plane. Are you subfascially, or are you actually splitting gland? That's what I don't really understand. But yeah, that's I think what Preservé would say is that you're actually increasing support by keeping those ligaments.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. All right. Now on to the absolute best show summary ever, even better than the McAfee show. It's time for the rest of the story and the RJR Op Report.
Thanks, Bill. This was truly an epiphany podcast. Carolyn and Patrick, you guys were great. And we want to thank especially our sponsors, Allergan and Sientra. So let's go with the op report. 3 take-home messages for our viewers. Surgeons, not scans alone. In-office ultrasound is the cornerstone of breast implant surveillance. Plastic surgeons are uniquely equipped to deliver this care. They know the anatomy, the implants, and have so well articulated the patient's journey in ways radiologists don't often see it at all. Surveillance should be done in the hands of those who place and understand implants best, and that's the surgeon. Second, truth over trends. Misinformation on breast implants spreads rapidly on social media, as we've seen, and even within medicine. So patients and doctors alike must be vigilant. Clicks do not equal credibility. Remember that, do not equal credibility. The best care comes from evidence, expertise, and experience, not algorithms. And the last thing, and probably the most important, is honesty is healing. The truth will set you free. And the mission of TBH is exactly that. Patients deserve clarity, they deserve transparency, and especially compassion. Only by being honest about the risks, the realities, and results can we truly safeguard and trust and elevate the care of our patients. And that's the RJR report.
Thanks, Rod. That's great stuff. That was indeed a full throttle show. Thanks to our 2 experts, Dr. Glicksman, Dr. Mallucci. Incredible insights, y'all. Thanks for coming on, and it was a great discussion. Thanks to the Media PSC team for all that they do to make this show happen. And thanks to all of you in the audience. Keep clicking that like button and make sure to send us all your questions and topics that you want to hear about in the future. Don't miss our next episode. See you all very full throttle on the next TBH.